Okay, how do we operate it? Like this. When I had the note that I have 7 minutes to address this issue, one of the engineers bought me a pack of 20 block diagrams. This is the simplest one. So knowing the time of this presentation, I will spare you the rest of them and make a note. First, I would like to emphasize that in spite of thinking in revolutionary terms, a whole new era, cybersecurity is one element in an ongoing information warfare. And in my perspective, not a whole new type of warfare, and I think the rest of the discussion will help me explain it. I will put few of the more critical elements for security fairly fast. I believe everyone can read it, so I will not have to repeat, and I will not have to overcome the time that I got for this presentation. All those elements of encryption and compression and security and don't trust foreign elements, they all refer to modern systems, but also to I learned today a new term from my Singapore colleague. Thank you for that, the Infocom. So the system that I refer to is this carrier pigeon, which needs all those elements exactly the same way. And there are many stories that one can find in the literature about a whole warfare that took from maybe Noah time, if you take it as a warfare, it's not a warfare, scout. But later on, during the World War I and World War II even, pilots had used it for communication in case of disaster, as well as, by the way, this picture was taken from the Israeli Defense Force Operator Manual in 1948, our independence war. So it is a system. And there were other generations. I'll mention one. I called it here the wire hackers. But really, during the Civil War in America, they have used quite extensively the media of telegraph, and they had to secure the wires, and there were a lot of attempts and successes to either cut it, divert it, or even put some false information, spoofing. If we look at the historical perspective, on the first column I have the evolution, just an example of evolution from the carrier pigeons through the telegraph, Morse radio, the speech radio, radar, by the way. It's another way of communication, information communication, data links, internet, intranets, and intranets could be over wire, over radio. All of that is on the left column. And then the second to it is denial of service, techniques that have used through the years. Falcons to hunt the carrier pigeons or hunters, cut wires in the telegraph era, jam all kind of electronic information from Morse radio, speech radars, etc. to the very famous denial of service DDoS technique plus others. In the information gathering, we may call it Intel, the era of the carrier pigeons brought the encryption and the decryption to a new level. And the telegraph production, any problems? You don't have it now? I was talking to myself. I'll let you find what I've talked about in this table. The Intel elements of deciphering codes have not started with Internet, as we can tell. Later on, elements like COMINT, communication intelligence, and ELINT became very important tools in Intel gathering, or as we call it today in a more general term, signal intelligence. It's still there, and it has a lot of resembling to the cyber domain. False information, either replacing nodes on the pigeons, reroute wires and send false telegraph information, or send false information via Morse. By the way, there are stories about cases where people have been able to detect false Morse by the rhythm of keying the Morse key. All kind of others, like false information in the radar is very famous and known as all kind of spoofing, either coherent or non-coherent. Signal intelligence is part of any military security activity in today's era. What is important is to look at the means for accessibility into the domain. From hunters during the pigeon era, wire hacking is part of the capability to hack into a telegraph during the Civil War in America, or radio hacking, which is all the capabilities to either listen or interfere with radio communication. I added in red two fairly new accessibilities, which are the computer hacking, which are different, but they still use a lot of the old tricks. If we look at the countermeasures, which in our terms is the security measures, it started with speed and multiplications of elements during the pigeon era, encryption in case of the information falling into the wrong hands. During the telegraph, wire dominance. He who dominated the wire could ensure the safety of the message. To the electromagnetic dominance, which is a critical part ever since wireless communication exists. If we look at Internet today, it is mainly firewalls and antiviruses with some capabilities in encryption and more complex things that exist. With the RF intranet, we may add to all that the electromagnetic dominance from one end, the computer era on the other hand. While we talk about radios, we have to mention that there are many capabilities within the radios to make it less probability of intercept. This stands for LPI, or frequency hopping, another technique. Spread spectrum is a third one, and so on. So all those exist. And what we see today is a new domain, but not a new subject. It's the same old subject with a new domain that has to be addressed. Very important. The question was, so what is cyber security next? At least this is the subject of our panel. I think is to move from what people call today the perimeter security. I rather call it the defense in depth, which is a security era of trenches, semi-fixed obstacles such as firewalls and antivirus, to a predictive, dynamic, intelligence-based situation awareness, which includes detection of attack indicative signs and timely alerts to initiate adaptive changing security measures. In other words, the attack should see at any given time, even if they repeat what they do many times, every time a different response, so that they cannot, or it is much harder to predict where is the soft point of the defense. I think in the short term, that's what we can say about the change. Now, what is required for that? I think 4 elements. One of them is to be able to model the cyber environment. We use ontology tools for scientific modeling of complex entities and the relationship between them. That's how we better understand and predict the system behavior. Another element is the mathematical fusion tools served for fusion of radars, electronic warfare, and SIGINT, which are all massive data packages, or as we heard today in the morning, the big, I lost the term, but the guy in the morning that from the big, thank you. I think this is very important, and the tool that we have today is built on many, many years of experience of handling that for all the electronic intelligence real time that is required anyhow. The third, by the way, the access time is for the lack of response of the computer. The third is operational research tools to optimize the security activities. So if you have a situation awareness, you know what's the problem. Now, how do we use the kind of defense that we can apply best in this case? Last but not least, computer hacking know-how. With all that, I think that I have given you a hint of what do we think about the next generation. And since time is over, I will hand it back.
Very good.
Thank you.